What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined as always by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Back on time. The power has stayed on. The pod is back on schedule. You love to see it, folks.
Yeah, recording on Mondays. It's a little bit weird actually. Thinking how the last 2 weeks just haven't been able to do it. Couldn't even imagine recording on time the last 2 weeks, but Con Ed cooperating, so I'm happy about that. Dave, question for you: how much of our podcast is ghostwritten by Sci-Hi the Prince? All of it? 2/3 of it?
30 to 40 episodes.
Yeah, something like that. Let's see if people can pick out which ones they are. And if you want to go through and listen, hit that subscribe button if you're on youtube.com/nostalgiapod or go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to get it in your earballs any way you'd like to. We got some music and some TV, some really quality TV to talk about today, Dave. Let's start, though, with someone that we didn't talk about last week when we mentioned the XXL freshmen because they didn't make it. Guapdad 4000 dropping Platinum Falcon Returns, a little 6-song EP, nice little 18-minute listen. Give me a bit of the lowdown on Guapdad. Jeez, what a name!
Yeah, this is the second EP he's dropped this year. He's been doing this whole thing about releasing like just singles constantly, like one a week. So actually, 5 of the 6 tracks on Platinum Falcon Returns had already been out, and I was like. Mm-hmm. Just waiting for him to like gear up for like maybe another album or something for we would talk about him, but it seems like he was just doing these little EP drops. So we decided to talk about the second one here, which I actually think is a little better than the first one. But he also has 2 albums out. The most recent one was Dior Deposits last year, and I think that's when he really started to make some big noise. You know, about a year ago is when Stereo Gum and Vice both wrote about the rising wave that is scam rap in hip hop. You've heard me mention TJX6 of Detroit before, who's probably the best example of this. You listen to a song like Swipe Lesson, where he tells you how he defrauds like Best Buy and stuff in really eloquent rapped ways that are also really funny. And I think Guapdad's a little different because he's not as upfront about his scamming ways currently. He seems to just kind of wax poetic about that being more of his past life, the way Pusha T remembers his Escobar beginnings. So Guapdad's a little different. You know, I feel like he's leaning more towards being a normal rapper, but you know, he didn't have choppas, he had VPNs, you know. Mm-hmm. So a little different. But I think he's pretty funny and definitely has his moments. So that's why I wanted to talk about him.
Yeah, and you know, obviously I'm not as tuned into Guapdad as you are. Very interesting name. Like the name, especially the 4000. I don't know if there's any meaning behind that, but just a great number to choose for the back half. Platinum Falcon Returns, like you said, most of these songs had already been released. But I think there's a lot of quality on here. And just kind of looking quickly through the Spotify numbers, for someone that didn't quite make the XXL list, still some pretty decent numbers here. We have 4 songs in his top 5 have multi-million listens, not dollar listens, but listens. And a couple of songs on here I think will probably get a little bit more run now, like Orgasm Full of Pain, which only sits at around 250, but that one really jumped out at me as being probably one of the catchier songs and the ones I was left being like, all right, I was bouncing to that. It had at least a really interesting and like ear-catching hook to it, if nothing else, and you know, a ridiculous kind of metaphor, so to speak. But
yeah,
I think that there's a lot of that throughout this. Just like you find yourself bouncing to it. It's not anything too heavy, and you just kind of leave like, oh, that was a nice listen overall.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think of something like the last track, which was the one new track, Hairless Horseman featuring Boogie, and that one's he's a little more softer spoken on that, and you know, kind of pondering if he should go back to fraud, you know, versus staying in the rap limelight. And you know, it's kind of interesting to hear him say that. But you know, on these 6 songs, he really does kind of change up that sound, right? Because you have Hairless Horseman, where he's a little slower, a little softer spoken. You have No Home for the Brave, where he almost does some like sing-songy stuff, like on the on that hook, the racky rack racks part, you know.
Right.
And then you have something where it's just kind of hot fire, like Little Scammer That Could with Denzel Curry. So, and if you listen to some of his other projects, you've seen this versatility as well. So, and actually, he had another single come out this year. It's a Rich Brian single that he's featured on called Bali. And what he feels like someone who can really kind of adapt. And like, I think lyrically, he's not always that interesting, but like as you said, on something like Orgasm Full of Pain, he's kind of maybe not talking about any new themes, but he's approaching them in, I guess, a little bit of a unique way. So that's cool to hear. And his story is kind of interesting too, because when he was like coming up and like making himself into a real rapper, you know, as someone who literally was a scammer, you know, it's slightly different than validating yourself after TikTok success, you know. But he was bragging in the early days about scamming Drake. He literally got Drake to play After Party for free, meaning didn't pay him like $100,000 or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah, why not?
Like you can watch, I think there's some videos where it's like he meets G-Eazy for the first time at the trailer, and you can see on G-Eazy's face that he's like, "Who the fuck is this dude? Is it like why am I meeting him again?" Like it's right. Like stuff like that where like the story is pretty funny. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next big album. But I think there's some cool highlights here, and Little Scammer That Could, I think, have probably one of my favorite just off the cuff lines. Money longer than the DMV line.
There it is. No, that's definitely one of the other tracks that stood out, and I think especially Denzel Curry kind of on it gives them that cosign, a little bit of legitimacy there. So I think we're gonna stay tuned into Guapdad 4000 as hopefully more stuff and another album comes out. But why don't we transition to another young artist dropping a short album, nine tracks, really only 7 songs, a couple of like intro tracks, and that artist is Victoria Monét, not to be confused with Janelle, but you know, I think similarly there's some sonic similarities in terms of their styles, and also their content. And this album, Jaguar, totally sexy, groovy, like fusion of R&B and pop, mixed in with a little bit of jazz elements. It was a real pleasure to listen to. How were you feeling listening to Jaguar, and what were the elements of it that you either liked or didn't like?
Yeah, I also liked it a lot, and it actually came as quite the surprise in a good way, because I didn't really have high expectations going in. I think, you know, Victoria Monét is someone who had some music come out the earlier part of last decade, but didn't really make too much noise. And I didn't really even know who she was until she had this loose single come out with Ariana Grande called Monopoly, which was just kind of this light, fluffy, you know, pop song, which is pretty fun. And then going off that, I realized that Victoria Monét is one of Ariana Grande's really close friends. She's in the 7 Rings video, but more importantly, she is a big-time collaborator with Grande, has co-wrote many songs, some of her biggest songs across multiple albums. And I think that she was Grammy nominated as a result of that. And that didn't necessarily mean that I was all the way in, because if we recall last year, we had this similar introduction to Ariana Grande collaborators when we listened to Social House. Yep. And you can go check the review on that, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. We were not big fans of that EP. So I was like, Ariana Grande collaborator friends, not necessarily the all clear, but Victoria Monét, this kind of gave me some Julia Michaels vibes, where you're like, this is someone who clearly knows how to make music and is now trying to create her own identity for herself because she's that talented. And Jaguar's pretty short, but there's a lot of good moments here. And apparently this is actually a part 1 of an album, so that there's more to come, hopefully soon. But what stood out to me was there's, you know, like the 70s like disco vibes and stuff. Yeah. And how that's, you know, becoming more and more in vogue in mainstream pop music right now. And also kind of prescient. A song like Ass Like That is obviously very sexual and very upfront, and just kind of reminded me of WAP, which like came out like I think the same day. So good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it should be maybe said first. One of the, I think, really cool things about Victoria Monet is that she is totally open about her identity as a queer woman, and that comes through, I think, strongly on this album, and just in terms of her sexuality being a major part of who she is as an artist is very clear. Like a song like Dive, which was probably the first song on the album that really like grabbed me, and I was like, ooh, okay, there's really something here. But I mean, the whole time she's like talking about going down, having a chick go down her, or her going down a chick, and seeing it if their head game is strong. It's like, all right, sick. Like this is what like the artist she wants to be. This is what she wants to be make music about. And the song sounds so fucking smooth and just really grabs you. It kind of has this like horn section that wraps it up at the end, kind of leaves on this high note. And if there's one critique I would say is I think a lot of the songs kind of follow a similar structure where it has this like breakdown or like jazz infused like horn section at the end of the songs, and that was just kind of something I found myself falling into a rhythm a bit in the album. But I mean, Dive, a couple other songs I liked. Where was the title track Jaguar? I thought Experience was really good. You mentioned Ass Like That. Like, there's just some really great tracks. And you mentioned that 70s vibe on Jaguar. It almost like, I don't know if it was like interpreting it, but it sounded like the song Conga. I forgot who it was by, but I think it's Gloria Estefan actually. But the breakdown at the end, I was like, oh shit, this is giving me some real like conga vibes here, and I just thought it was a really awesome sound. Really blown away by this, especially because she's been around since 2014, dropping music here and there. But as far as I had known, she never really had anything that really grabbed my attention.
Right.
Looks like she had a song, Monopoly, with Ariana Grande off, the last album that got plays. But I mean, this is really her breakout in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Experience I really liked because that was truly like a synth pop song, and also really I think expert use of Khalid, someone who given the way he sings can be misused in like more sleepy fashion. But I thought they actually had good chemistry on that. I like that one a lot. So yeah, this is definitely her mainstream breakout, if you can call it that. I'm not sure exactly how much burn this album's really going to get for her because she's not on a major label anymore. So I don't know what the promo is looking like for this, but hopefully, the association with Ariana Grande just drives people to her, and already was showing a lot of support for this, as you can imagine, because it seems like they are just, legit friends. So that's nice to see. So yeah, I hope this does well, and I'm definitely looking forward to whatever that second piece is, whenever that comes, because it just seems like someone who's just getting started, and this is a great place to start.
Yeah, Moses Sumney-esque with the double album, releasing it in 2 parts. We already added one of the songs. I added Dive to the playlist like immediately after listening to it, so check that out. Nowstalgia Best of 2020 on Spotify. I want to move on to another album that really blew me away, though, Dave. And that's Burna Boy's Twice as Tall. Man, this album was unexpected to me in terms of how much I really vibed with the whole thing, and just felt like the whole thing grooved and meshed so well. Burna Boy been blowing up, especially since last year's African Giant. I think Ye is probably the song most people kind of know him from. But I mean, he was on the Stormzy album that we reviewed earlier in the year, on a song with Ed Sheeran, actually. So if you want to hear our opinion on Ed Sheeran, check that out. Stormzy's back on this with him. He has a couple of great guests. And actually, I think his most high-profile guest is like the only moment of the album I really just did not gel with, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Comes out left field.
Yeah, for real. But I want to, before we get too deep into it, temperature check for you on the album.
Yeah, Burna Boy, the Nigerian Afrofusion superstar, Grammy nominated for African Giant last year, did not win. I had listened to African Giant when I was abroad, actually in Prague, getting my worldwide on,
So
and
lovely.
did like it a lot. And he's someone who I feel like has just been this really like nice rise to see, because this is his 5th album, and he's had multiple ones on the majors, and it's just been a huge rise. And I think it's a really interesting story, which we can get to. But I liked it a lot. I think there's so many moments where it's just like, even if this is a genre that one's not super well versed in, I certainly am not well versed in Afrofusion and Afrobeat music. It's just so confident in what it is. I think does it in a really good way. And I was not expecting him to release a whole nother full length just like a year after African Giant. Yet here we are. He seems like he made this completely in quarantine, and then brought in Diddy to help him kind of shore up the loose ends at the end, which is kind of cool as well. But yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how, and I think this is a common theme in the albums I really enjoy, but how there seemed to be like a central sound and theme, but it's still expanded into all these different genres. Like you talked about that Afrofusion, which I think comes across really well on like obviously on a song like Wonderful, which is just like a total African jam. Real like shot of adrenaline when I was driving in the car listening to this. I was like, oh, this goes. But the whole album, I mean, other than the song with Chris Martin, which is I guess probably the radio grab song on here, Monsters You Made, which still I think kind of holds that sound. And I think it's just Chris Martin's vocals don't really do what they were, I think, hoping it would do, or deliver what they hope it would deliver. But other than that, I felt like the whole album was really tight, expansive, fun, interesting. And the lyrical content, too, was also really impressive. He talked about a lot of really personal things, trials, tribulations, without ever kind of falling into like a difficult place with it. Like it always kind of kept moving and felt triumphant. So really enjoyed that. Give me a little bit about this backstory you mentioned about Burna Boy, because I think that plays a bit into where he's at now in this album.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about Afrobeat music, Afrofusion music, I only really think of like Wizkid as someone who's came through here, and obviously think of the big moment he had with Drake, which really kind of exposed him to the West, as Drake has been known to bring other genres into the mainstream focus, because he, at the end of the day, is a fan of things. But
steals culture.
But in the case of Burna Boy, his success, his like slow success and rise to superstar, was really cool to see, because if you listen to Twice as Tall, you listen to African Giant, you can tell that he's not compromising his African identity, his African musical influences, right? This music sounds really like that. You hear those rhythms and those distinct vocals that you associate. You mentioned Wonderful. You think of that background chorus early on in Wonderful that really has that African vibe. And songs like Naughty by Nature and Time Flies, where like that percussion again really feels like that's where it's from, right? But this kind of reminds me of the way reggaeton and Latin trap and even K-pop have just continued to be more and more successful here in the West, and just find more and more acceptance without really changing what that music is. As I think the gatekeepers have begun to go away with that on the internet and streaming, just increasing accessibility. This music from other places can be here in the West, and if it's good, people will like it. They don't care where it's from, right? And like I think for me and you, we are not people that have listened to Afrobeat and Afrofusion all that long, but like that doesn't matter. If it's good music, it's good music. So it's really cool to see just that validation again for someone who obviously is a really great artist, and he's now getting the return on that, in the West. I know he spent a little time in London during his formative years, but did move back to Nigeria. So he puts on for where he's from, and it comes across the music. And again, that's just great to see. And you mentioned Chris Martin, And Matsushi Mei was interesting to me because you listen, he has like that line about Burna Boy has that line about uh, slaves and the minimum wage, and it's like actually one of his more poignant comments is on that song, but it has that like that big booming pop production that just feels
Yeah,
out of place compared to the rest of the album, right?
it
And
does.
actually, I think the most surprising thing for me though was the opening moments where you get that Pat Boone sample from 1959, which apparently was from
Hmm.
the movie Journey to the Center of the Earth, where he's like, you know, that 50s show tune, have to be a
Yeah.
little bit taller, you know. It's like, wow,
Hmm.
where's this coming from? This is something. But then he listen to the album, and
Yeah.
it's quite uh quite where it's from. So
I actually
it's
thought
really
Level
good.
Up, that opening track was a real display of production gold, because you have that sample that kind of leads it off, and then you have you saw Nafar and Burner Boy kind of going back and forth a bit, but then they bring the sample back, but it's just kind of like drowned out and starts to like almost fade into the drums, and it's kind of like they're taking that old school style and just like, we're just gonna put all our new like Afro sound and dancehall and reggaeton just like all into this right now, and it's just like a real like, I feel like a tone setter for the rest of it. And even though it's probably not the track I would go back to the most,
Mhm.
I thought that was a great table setter. And then the drums are such a driving force in this, like you mentioned, obviously a huge part of all these genres that Burner Boy kind of stands for, but especially that Afrobeat genre, like alarm clock. Like you get that feeling of like
Mhm.
an alarm clock going off, like waking up, like getting that like rush of adrenaline as your day starts, kind of. A song like you mentioned Naughty by Nature. I thought I'm gonna mess this name up, but No Fit Vex. I think they said they pronounce it No Fit Ve or something like that. I
Mhm.
thought that really embodied that Afrobeat sound too, with like the chanting that you mentioned, that chorus, and then you get Stormzy coming on with a
Mhm.
bit more toned down
Yeah,
near the
softer
end of the
for
album,
sure.
but I thought just really they blended together really well. Obviously, they've collabed a couple times now. Just so really exciting, and to I mean, like you said, I was not really tuned into when Burner Boy is going to be dropping his next album. I wasn't aware of African Giant, but to have it come out now and sound so strong and just like a vibrant kind of album dropped in the middle of all this greatness
Mhm.
that we've had going on, just really cool moment. So definitely one of my favorite of the year for sure. Where's it at for you? You think?
Yeah, definitely up there. Definitely up there. Yeah, I mean, just reading about it, this was made almost entirely in quarantine, and you know his work with Diddy is across multiple time zones because Burna was
Mhm.
in Nigeria when he was making most of this, and um, you know those drums you cited on Alarm Clock, Diddy brought those drums in from none other than
Mm.
Anderson .Paak, and
Ah,
and then little production from Timbaland on Wettin' Day Sup, which I thought was also another highlight.
yeah.
Honestly, the last 5 tracks I really like. Time Flies, after Monsters You Made,
Minus, yeah.
When They Sup, Real Life, and Bank on it. I thought it was a really strong finish.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, you look and Burna Boy's a name that has continued to pop up. Like I know he had one of the big highlights on the Lion King album that just popped back up with Black is King from Beyonce, right? Same thing, the Ja R.A. song, which we had on our playlist
Hmm.
last year. And he had a really big song with the UK rapper Dave Location. Like he's becoming a big force. And like just as you see these features coming up, you can tell that like the like the globalization of musical ideas is just continues, and that's awesome.
For sure. Definitely give this one a listen if you got a chance. Twice as Tall from Burner Boy. We'll have a track or two on our playlist as well. Real triumphant record. Really glad we got that one. Also, really glad that we got this new show on HBO, Lovecraft Country, from Misha Green, based off the 2016 book by Matt Ruff. This is really a story about this is what, 1950s,
Mhm.
1960s, like
uh,
Midwest
yeah.
Chicago area, kind of heading south. A couple of black folk are
Mhm.
traveling to find different things for themselves. Jonathan Banks' character is searching for his dad. You have
You say Jonathan Banks?
Did I say Jonathan Banks?
I
Oh
thought I
God,
said that.
Mike Ehrmantraut, man. Oh God, my bad. I wrote down the wrong name. That's why I'm looking at it now. Sorry, let me pull it up here.
Jonathan Majors,
Jonathan Majors,
the
thank
young
you.
goat.
Those short names mess me up. Jonathan Majors is traveling to try to find his dad as he has gone missing. So he travels back home after going to war.
Yeah,
You
post Korean War.
You have Journey Smollett, who's, I don't know, kind of just like trying to find her way in the world. Doesn't really seem to have much to hold on to at this time. And then you got Courtney B. Vance just being their guide.
The uncle.
Pretty. I think I really like his character a lot in this. And it seems like we have a lot more to come after this first episode dropped on HBO this weekend. I am looking forward to this. I don't know if I'm totally on board with everything, but I thought visually and just like some of the elements are interesting enough where I'm like, all right, I want to give Jonathan Banks / Jonathan Majors a little bit more time to cook. How are you feeling after the first episode, though?
Yeah. Similarly. I mean, definitely want to show support for Jonathan Majors. So I loved in The Last Black Man in San Francisco and Defy Bloods. So he's definitely on the rise, and this is probably great exposure for him. So happy about that. And this is another entry in the Jordan Peele IP verse, where he's a producer alongside J.J. Abrams, and this definitely feels similar to Twilight Zone. Feels tonally like what the Peele Renaissance has been with Get Out and Us, obviously, right? And I think that's kind of been the big talking point thus far. I know the critics have seen, I believe, the 5 of the 10 episodes, but the kind of using like the real the Lovecraftian like actual monsters to present a metaphor about the true monsters that were racist white people in Jim Crow America. It's pretty smart and tactful, and I think this first episode did a good job of highlighting that like actual terror that just blatant racism was, and the fear that traveling as a Black person at that time was. I mean, there's reference to like the Green Book, right? Like the safe places Black people could travel to, state to state. So obviously, we've only seen the first episode. I don't know how effective these metaphors will remain and stuff, because you are kind of juggling a lot of stuff when you have this thing you're adapting, this novel, which in turn is heavily influenced by all those Lovecraftian horror stories, right? And when we're blatantly going to show that kind of horror stuff alongside this more prescient societal comment, it does seem like it's a lot to juggle. But through one episode, I was quite invested. And we know that the dad that Jonathan Majors' character is searching for is played by Michael K. Williams. So that's exciting. And I mean, Courtney B. Vance just kind of being on the side too. Obviously, he's very overqualified for that. So I'm definitely in thus far. And going in when I knew about the show, and before I knew that the kind of the cultural comments that it was carrying, I was kind of just writing it off because I was like, oh, is this like Haunting of Hill House? It's probably too scary for me. It's not my thing, right? But it's kind of more like, at least through one episode, it was kind of more like Stranger Things, right? It's like monster horror, but like there was no like real jump scares or like really anything that's gonna really like unsettle you in that regard, right? It's again, it's more the societal issues that are scary. So I like that through one.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was more suspenseful than like terrifying in any sense. And I agree. I think the highlights, and kind of weird to say it this way, but the highlights were certainly the scene where they flee the diner and they're getting shot at and have that car chase, and then the other car flips that, and then you see like that blonde-haired girl, which I'm really excited to see like what these elements of sci-fi and fantasy are going to be with this. And then also obviously when they have to get across the county line by a certain time, that scene was incredibly anxiety producing for me. And then you kind of have the monster show up, and I didn't find that necessarily as compelling. And I think that might be where the show loses me a little bit is some of these sci-fi elements that are going to be included. I don't know how on board I will be with them. I'm going to give them a chance, obviously, and I think the cast alone merits me watching this and just seeing what comes from it. But like you said, there's a lot to juggle, and when you have that many balls to keep up in the air, some of them aren't going to land as well. So I'm a little worried about that. How are we feeling about Jordan Peele's like production? Like, I don't know, record here. He's had a couple of misses in the last few years. After Get Out, he seemed like he was kind of poised to be the next Hitchcock, and Us was. I think we really liked it, but I think it left some people feeling like the logic didn't totally work out, and that turned them off. And then obviously we talked about Twilight Zone, and I think that was a big swing and a miss.
Yeah, apparently Twilight Zone season 2 had a really dynamite episode in that second season. I have not seen the second season. I haven't seen much talk about it beyond that one episode. But did he have something else recently too? I forget.
He did. I'm pulling it up.
Something we didn't see. Under his Monkey Paw production banner.
Yeah, he has Candyman coming up.
Oh, right.
And then Hunters is also something he's got his fingers.
Oh, the Amazon show Hunters. Interesting. That also didn't do too well. That's the Al Pacino guys, the Nazi Hunter show. Candyman, the director of Candyman, I forget her name, she was just hired to direct Captain Marvel 2. So that perhaps bodes well for Candyman, which I believe has been delayed into 2021. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, J.J. Abrams is the same way, right? He's attached his name to tons of, even Spielberg, like they attach their name to things, and who knows how much creative involvement they even have had. Like, I really just want to see Jordan make another movie that he directs, right? And that's what I'll judge him on. I still really liked Us, but I understand that did not live up to Get Out. I think that was also kind of an impossible task, though, so I wouldn't really hold that against him. Like, I remember I saw a lot of like hyperbolic statements when Us came out about people I gave Jordan another chance, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this guy's obviously a really great director,
right? And just keep giving him all the chances. You're gonna like
what?
It.
So the second movie wasn't also an A+, and now you're out. Like, I don't understand that line of thinking. So still very in on the Jordan Peele brand. But yeah, I mean, he's becoming like a lot of the people. Like the EP name probably doesn't mean a whole lot. But again, through one episode of Lovecraft Country, definitely interesting to see where we go from here. There's a lot of things to like, and there's also, unfortunately, a lot of really prescient commentary as a result.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree on the Jordan Peele question. I just felt like he had taken quite a few losses recently, but I think his original stuff is certainly where he kind of butters his bread, so to speak. Who really jumped off the screen in this, though? And you have obviously Jonathan Majors, Courtney B. Vance. I thought Journey Smollett was by far the most interesting and captivating character on the screen. And I think she's going to have even a bigger role moving forward. I think it's kind of her and Jonathan Majors as like co-leads, it seems. So really interested to see where her character goes. But last time we saw her was Birds of Prey.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, one of the last movies we could see in theaters before they shut down.
That's right.
So I think give her more roles. She seems pretty great.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm bored with her. All right, why don't we transition from the beginning of one show to the end of another HBO show? Perry Mason. We reviewed the first episode. I think we were left feeling optimistic about it, if not maybe a little bit confused at some of what was going on, but just kind of loving the visual style, the tone of it, being that like old school noir type of thing. How are you feeling now that they've gotten to see all eight chapters of Perry Mason?
Good. I think once Perry Mason got to settle in and set its table, I thought it really found itself. I found the show really, really engaging, and as you mentioned, it has ridiculous production values. Like, you watch this show and I just see the dollar signs. You think of all the sets they made and Heck, they literally made
Costume design.
the World War I flashback scenes.
Oh yeah.
Like Reese is hanging out with George McKay, just fucking running through the
Right.
trench, like totally unnecessary. But like, yeah, like it just
Awesome.
jumps out. I saw a thing. I saw this link on Wikipedia. It was from Film LA. It was just a report on expenditures that filmed in LA, and it said that they spent $75 million on season 1 of Perry Mason, which for context is like $25 million less than what they spent on Westworld last season. So that's a lot of money. And
keep putting more money into this though.
Yeah. Please. and you know that period detail goes beyond just stark sets. You have the fashion, you have the culture, you have the diction. You know, it really takes you back to you know, what were we in the 20s in the show, right? Pre World War II. Okay, yeah, still Prohibition though. Yep. And you really I feel like you really settle into that. And once we get the pilot doing what pilots often have to do and introducing you, you know, there's a lot of characters, and I think that's probably overall a bit of a negative with the show. Is the plot is a little more complicated than it ended up probably finishing up. Like it probably didn't warrant as much audience confusion. Well, yeah, there's a lot of characters, a lot of threads, right? Maybe a little hard to follow at times, but at the end of the day, I thought it was just really engaging due to its deep bench of cast of characters, and you know, just a fun mystery leading into a legal angle to it. You know, I you know, sometimes something that simple is all it takes.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think after the first maybe 2 or 3 episodes, it really like found itself. I think the beats really every episode felt familiar, but also really new and engaging in terms of how the story went and the twists and turns of it. And I thought Matthew Rhys was just fantastic, dude. Like we kind of already knew this, right? Like he's been nominated for the Americans so many times, and did he finally get the win? I think he did, right?
He did
last time.
Yes,
Yeah,
final
so he
season.
finally got that Emmy win.
Great speech.
Yeah, but he's just this I think really solid actor who's finally getting these more opportunities, and he plays that like, you know, like down on his luck guy who like comes into his own and like reluctant hero role so well through this. And it never felt like grating. Like I never was like, man, fuck this Perry Mason guy. I was like, you know what, I kind of get it. Like and they explain like the PTSD he obviously deals with. They kind of explain like how he like sees the world, and you kind of just understand him so well. And then he allows all these characters around him who are a little bit less well developed. I mean, they are the supporting characters; they're not the main characters. But I think you get enough depth on most of them to feel like they're lived in. And I think characters like Officer Paul Drake, played by Chris Chalk, was a standout to me. I obviously thought Juliet Rylance was fantastic as Delia, true standout. Shea Wiggum. I mean, like this cast goes so deep, and then that's not even mentioning probably the biggest scene stealer, which was Tatiana. What's his name? Maslany.
Sister Alice.
Yeah, I mean, every scene she was in, I was like, you know what? This is how cults start, because you have a person with this kind of personality who can just really like, go out there and be like this. And she was totally captivating. So that I think this is a total win for HBO, obviously, and I'm just looking forward to more seasons. It seems like they're setting it up for more. So.
Officially renewed for season 2 already. Obviously, no idea when that happens, and a show that is not shy about its breadth of scale in its filmmaking might be tough to get back to making this show in the short term. You know, some stuff is already back in production. This feels like something that probably needs to wait a little bit, you know. And I don't mind. Obviously, I wouldn't want them to cut corners for the sake of coming back. And I think, you know, speaking to that the depth of talent on the show, you have to assume in season 2 we will be without some of those actors, right? I assume Maslany is gone. Obviously, John Lithgow's character died. Gail Rankin, who's the mother of the dead baby, they're probably all gone. Lily Taylor as Alice's mom as well. Like those are all strong, important presences on the show, so you will have to replace them. But And the way the show kind of leaves you, right, is you have Perry set up as the new Lithgow, the new lawyer, and Della's his associate, and is going to become a lawyer too. And then Drake is the new investigator. Meanwhile, Wiggum went off to join the other DA guy, who I believe that character name is the same one who's like a lawyer rival from the original Raymond Burr Perry Mason show. So kind of have that set up. So maybe Stephen Root also leaves the show. I thought he was great as the DA.
Oh yeah.
But either way, you see that like formula, and like you have this cast, right? And I feel like the show just now really lends itself well to a full season arc. Once again, I like that, rather than Case of the Week, which I believe is how the old show was. You can just have these 8-episode arcs, and I think this will be interesting because now that Perry is the lawyer, he's not the investigator, he's not the private eye. So like that hard-boiled nature of the show, especially the early goings, right? I'm curious to see if we still get that in the form of Chris Chalk's character and Shea Wiggum perhaps too, because Perry, and then again though, the way the show ends, it's right, it's like it's a mistrial, which is a win, yet they bribed a juror even though they didn't have to. So it's like I actually kind of like that choice though, because it doesn't make Perry this like rock star right away. I actually kind of like the origin story nature to this whole season and the way they told this story. So I think there's a lot of actually avenues to go with it, and I have no doubt that they'll find new talent to fill new characters for the next season. Obviously, it's HBO; they don't have a problem with that. So, yeah, I mean, for a show, I feel like Perry Mason definitely was like got a bit of a mixed reception in the early goings, but I think it was a really rewarding watch once you let it settle in. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I actually like your point about how Perry being established as the kind of on the lawyer side, not doing as much of the investigative side of things, will allow for other characters to shine a bit more. And I think that's actually something that the show did well with the writing, was it really showed you a lot. Like, I can't remember if it was episode like 2 or 3. They really go into Delia's relationship with Hazel, and but they never really were like explicit about it until like the last episode where like Perry kind of calls her out for it, and they have that moment where she's like, I didn't think you'd throw that in my face the way that you just did. But it kind of just allows Delia to be like, this is my partner, the person I live with. We obviously can't be open about it because of the times and the social acceptance or lack thereof of it. But it's never like, we're going to show you everything about how Delia got here. But that gives you enough to kind of understand pieces of her. And it's the same thing with like Drake's background, right? And like the stuff going on with his family and living in a black neighborhood, and the way that he's seen within that neighborhood is very interesting. The same way that EB gets the whole backstory about him and his family, and how, he like thought about them, but went on to live his own life and abandoned them. Like, it just tells these parts of the story so well. Even having a cold open about Perry Mason's time in the war, like you mentioned, and we get, I think, 1 or 2 more flashbacks, but really it's like that one opening about it. And then they don't really ever have to go back there because you're like, okay, we understand how this is impacting him now. So it just like is very, I think, well written in that way. And to juggle all that they did and have all these awesome actors and to make the show look like $1 million, like there's Emmys coming for this. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it when award season comes. Yeah,
EB was kind of interesting for me because there was a lot of times in the early going where I'm like, this guy sucks. Like, fuck you, dude, you're terrible. But then like once it goes, and like obviously Lithgow gets kind of just to do what he's done the later part of his career and just kind of act his ass off, I guess. But like you actually kind of feel for him as a guy who's kind of been left behind. The times have changed. So I thought that was actually quite well done. Unintentional comedy for me up to the period where the other DA guy who's helping Perry become a lawyer, he's like, oh yeah, the bar exam hasn't changed since like 1910 or whatever, however he says it. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? The bar hasn't changed? Like, it's just hilarious to think of, right? It's it's like seatbelts and smoking inside. It's just something that's so foreign to us now, but like to hear something like that, it's like, Oh wow, you could have totally just cheated the shit out of this shit, huh?
Oh
Cool.
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. No, and I actually really liked that. And I did think that was like a funny thing how he like transitioned from being this PI to becoming a lawyer so quickly. But I
Yeah.
kind of like how they were just like, yeah, we're just gonna explain this away. The logic was sound.
Yeah.
Everybody understood it, and we moved on. The same thing from American Pickle,
Right.
like
Definitely.
explain it in a way that I'll buy into, and then just never mention it again. I don't need to see Matthew Reese like studying a bar exam book for like 3 episodes to figure this out. Yeah, I'm really excited for the show to come back whenever it does. I think this is a total triumph, and I think what's really cool about it too, and this is just like one last thought, and maybe we can shout out a moment or two we really liked, is that it perfectly mixes that like noir, like solving the mystery, and then taking it into the courtroom, right? And it's almost like a Law and Order episode over 8 episodes, but just like super well done, way more thought out, way more complex and compelling. So I think this is like the perfect kind of television show to like keep most people who like those sorts of show interested, but also feel like you're a little bit smarter than the average Dick Wolf viewer, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Any episodes or moments that really stood out to you?
Yeah, one thing towards the end that I really, really enjoyed, I think they did it a few times, was when they would cut back and forth between Perry and the DA talking to the press and giving their obviously different spins and viewpoints. And on one hand, that's another throwback to literally speaking out to the press outside as soon as you leave the courtroom. But just the way they would intersperse that to like maybe even like hold the hand of the audience a little bit and make sure you understand exactly what just happened and who thinks what. But I know the way it was done and like kind of the snappy nature to it was really engaging.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. I'm guessing the one you're thinking about is like right after they have the mistrial and it's going back and forth and like Perry's yelling at people and then they go to the DA and he like confronts that guy. And I thought that was really well done. I thought the courtroom scenes were really riveting a lot of times. I don't know if there's one in particular. I guess maybe it was when they had that woman who said that she heard Gail say that I killed my baby or whatever,
right?
And then like the whole room like erupts and everybody's like screaming and yelling. But then similarly, I thought the way that they kind of juxtaposed that with the scenes with like the religious scenes was really good. And that scene where she had the guy get up from his wheelchair, I thought that was just like holy crap, like really intense, but also like then they like pull back in the shower. She's like basically standing over the crowd, like just like going on and on. And it's just like the light. It was just an amazing shot. I was like, this is some high quality stuff right here.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's actually one of the moments where I was like, oh, COVID. It's like when they're all on top of each other in the church, just praying and chanting and stuff. And I'm like, ah, damn, that's gonna be tough to do again, huh? But yeah, I mean, Maslany. Yeah, she already won an Emmy for Orphan Black, but I thought she was quite the scene stealer because, again, as you said, the character she's playing is this great orator who's kind of captured the whole populace, on the radio. It's kind of interesting to think about too, because like there's like some little like subtle moments, right, where she's like, "Yeah, we got offered to advertise for I forget what it was, like toothpaste, bubble gum, whatever it was, some like random things." Like she was like pondering if she should quote unquote sell out for the sake of her ministry, and it's like, oh wow, that's relatable. People are talking about that all the time, right? And then like changing gears, I really liked some of the scenes with Drake's family and friends where they're kind of presented multiple viewpoints from the Black community at the time. Like his wife, right, much more conservative, like don't piss off the white people, right, like let's not ruffle any feathers. And you can tell that Drake doesn't really feel that way, and that he stops being a cop at the end. Like there's other people that they talk to that maybe I wouldn't say it, and they don't have like, I don't think anyone's talking to any like revolutionary views in those scenes, but like you can just see the it's more layered, right? So I think there's lots of little moments throughout Perry Mason that I think reward people that are paying attention.
For sure. Check this show out. It's great. What do we got on the docket for next week, Dave? Why don't we wrap up there? Because I think there's not much else we can say.
Speaking of great shows, I May Destroy You is finally coming to an end on HBO on Monday. So That's exciting. Can't wait to talk about that once again. Also have a bunch of big albums. Return of Bright Eyes, the return of The Killers, a new album from Nas.
What year is it?
The Dua Lipa remix album, and also new IFC film on demand starring Ethan Hawke, Tesla. Ethan Hawke as Tesla. Pretty cool.
Wow, Ethan Hawke getting those Artur roles, man. He's really something, that Ethan Hawke. All right, we're wrapping up there. Watch, listen, all the homework Dave just gave you. Also go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Follow us there, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, at nostalgiapod on Twitter. And that 5-star rating and review that you haven't left us yet will be much appreciated when you leave it on iTunes. Wear your mask, stay safe. Catch you next week.